Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations, and we are going to be working on this thrifted pot. So it's definitely got kind of that made in India kind of look and feel. I mean, the elephant and the palm tree are a bit of a giveaway. I love the shape of it. It's got these intricate feet, and it's got this raised, embossed kind of design here. But I wanted to try a couple of little things with this, and we're going to use bits and pieces of things. So we're going to use some decoupage paper, but I'm going to use bits and pieces from, I mean, this one I used the head. I used the head that was here to do a reverse decoupage mirror. No, I did an antique mirror with it. But I figure these old kind of antique looking roses can go here. So we're gonna use that. But I have to get some paint on here to start. So I'm also just gonna be using bits and pieces. Now for this, because there's some things I wanna play with that I want open time with, I am not going to use an all-in-one. Instead, I'm gonna be using my DIY paint, which is my clay-based paint, because it does not self-seal. So this is French Millinery, which is this soft gray kind of mauve kind of color. And so I'm gonna start by getting one coat of this on, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the plans that I have, because the next step I'm gonna want to do with wet paint. So hang in there, and we'll get this on and dry, and I'll bring you back for the next step. Okay, what I did do was just kind of cut out 2 circles that would fit in those areas. But the other thing that I want to prep before I start doing anything else is I want to have some other little pieces of this, because this goes into a border. It was okay to have straight edges, but I want to have some other pieces that I made decoupage elsewhere on the piece, and I don't want it to have straight edges because I want it to just kind of fit into my design. So I'm just taking a brush, dipping it into water, and I'm just kind of wetting the straight edges here so that I can just kind of loosely tear them. I don't want those really straight edges, and wetting my decoupage paper means I can just kind of tease those edges out and get a rough edge rather than a straight edge. A straight edge in the middle of my piece is going to look really unfinished. It's going to look like it's supposed to have an edge there. And instead, I want it to have a much more organic look and feel to it. So I'm going to do up a number of these little pieces because I'm not sure, you know, what I feel like goes where. And I want them to kind of be on the ready, so that as I'm going, I can just kind of piece them in wherever seems to work for me. This needs a second coat, but I wanted my papers ready because I'm just going to, rather than doing my second coat and then waiting for it to dry and adding decoupage glue and all that, I'm just going to embed them into the paint itself. So I want to have my paint wet. And let's face it, the paint itself will act like glue. I just want to make sure, because in this circle area, I want to get one of my designs, goes this way. I'm just making sure. Okay. And then that in essence is glued down. The wet paint is going to hold it in place. Now, obviously it's not sealed on the top. We'll get to that. But it is in place. I'm going to do the same thing. So you can see that. I'm going to do the same thing with my other circle. And then I have a couple of other little pieces that I'll apply, kind of wrapping up the side and around the front, so that it's not just in the circle, that we've got a couple of other places that we're going to include. This is dried, so you can see I've got some little just words. I've got some extra little pieces, and they're just kind of patched in there. Right now, they just look like they're kind of hanging in space, right? They don't, I mean, this has a border, so it looks like it belongs. These pieces, they just are there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start layering paints and colors. And this one, what is this one? This is just kind of like a custom mix. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this, which is very thick, and we're gonna add a bunch of water to it. Again, I'm just using things off the shelf. It looks like it's a lot of apothecary from DIY, probably mixed with some other things. I don't want a lot of this. I want it pretty watered down. And I'm going to offload. And I'm just kind of going around elements here. So some of the edging, some of those edges by and around. It's gonna look kind of patchy. But we're just adding a little bit more colors here and there. And we're gonna be building this up with other things. So some of it goes over top of papers, and that's okay because it's fairly light, and we're making some of those edges become a little bit more part of the design. And I'm not looking to have this everywhere. Plastic from my brush. Okay, so you can see that's a little bit patchy. We've got that little bit of the light green happening there. I'm gonna go grab, I think I want a bit of a gray. So I'm gonna go grab a gray and maybe a couple of other little things. Okay, what I've added, and I just added it to the same dish. I don't mind that it blends in there. I've got a little bit of skeleton key. Let that finish spritzing. That's a long spritz. It's way more water than I need. But I'm just gonna kind of do the same thing. I'm just gonna add this a little bit in spots. I'm gonna overlap it here and there with some of the other colors and over the paper. Now, the one thing that was nice about this was that the undercoat of this, that metallic undercoat, is kind of in those nice, deep, dark, bronzy tones. And we're gonna be able to use that because since I'm not using an all-in-one paint, this is gonna be easy to distress afterward as well. So bringing out some of the metallics, certainly in the feet and the details around, and we're gonna be able to layer more colors with some of the wax finishes as well. Okay, and now I'm gonna take you know, just because. I'm gonna take a little bit of, this is kind of thickened up a bit, so I'm just gonna take a little bit of Sandy Blonde from DIY. And again, I'm okay that it merges with the other colors. And we're gonna do the same thing. And as much as I was pouncing the other times, this time I'm kind of pouncing a little bit, but sort of blending a little bit too. So we're just softening a little bit of some of those lines, some of the marks that were in there. And then we want this to dry. Maybe we're gonna do one more thing. You know what? Because we're kind of playing, right? Right? Kind of playing. So let's do one more thing. All right, so this is kind of all modeled. We're gonna do another little bit of an aging thing. So what I have here is I have instant coffee. I use this a lot as a stain. I use it on furniture as a wood stain, and I love it for that. We're gonna stain this. I haven't done this before. We'll see how it goes. So I'm taking just like an artist brush, like a big fat watercolor brush. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this up under the rim. I'm just gonna paint some of the coffee here under the rim. And then I'm going to just kind of spritz it to flow down. So you can see it starting to flow and to drip. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to use the DIY paint, because it's not sealed yet. So that coffee can kind of drip down around everything. And I'm just kind of looking to sort of antique everything a little bit with this. And remember, my paper is not sealed yet either. So this is going to bleed into some of that paper. And just sort of just age it out a little bit. All right. I'm going to do this on the whole piece, and then I'm going to let it dry. Our project has had overnight to dry. Now, it didn't necessarily take overnight, but because of all that coffee that I used, the paper was quite wet, and I needed that to dry before I would seal it. And I do want to use a top coat on this, not a wax at this stage, just so that I get some extra protection on the paper. But before I do anything, what I do want to do is just lightly sand this. I had some curves here, so there's some wrinkles to my paper, which is not a big deal because I want it to look aged. But I do want to reveal a little bit of that metal hanging out below. Just kind of smooth it all out. Now, I will say this. When you saw some of the paper pieces that I had added, especially the ones with the words, they look quite bright, a little too pristine against this. But look at how they kind of fade in now, right? That they don't look so pristine anymore because of the coffee. It sort of unified a lot of this. So the next step in this process, and notice I'm not saying the final step, just the next step, is I am taking Big Top from DIY and I am going to seal the whole piece. I want to protect that paper, so I just need to give it a little bit more of a substantial finish than just wax. And so I'm going to get this all sealed and let it dry, and then we'll be back. We'll be back for more. This is all dried. And I gotta tell you, look at how awesome it already looks, right? I love this. What I want to do is I just want to highlight some of the details a little bit more. So I'm going to do two different things. I'm going to use a combination of some dark wax. Dark wax is the brown wax. And I always emphasize that with you guys just because I get so many people that are saying, okay, so dark wax is black wax, right? No, black wax is black wax. Dark wax is brown wax. I don't know why they don't call it brown wax, just to make people's lives simpler, but they don't. So I like to emphasize it. The difference with black wax, and I don't use the black wax as much, is just when you're looking to age a piece, age has that brownish kind of rusty sort of patina. Black wax I definitely use, but not as often because it's a stronger contrast, right? You're making more of a statement. And what I want to do with this piece is two things. I want to add a little bit of that dark wax to it to just kind of, again, deepen some of that shadowing, right? So I'm adding some of that wax where I want to make a stronger statement. Maybe some of the edging around some of my paper, down in around, you know, where some of the feet are. You can see that I'm offloading that wax, so I don't have tons of it on my brush, but I am sort of drifting it down and really moving it around and making sure that that little bit of wax is going a long way. Now, because I've already sealed this, it's not soaking into my paper. It's kind of emphasizing some of the creases or wrinkles if I had any, and I'm able to move it around. If I get too much in a spot, then I do have clear wax here on the table. I can just kind of dip my finger in and I can use it to kind of continue to move that brown wax, soften it out a little bit. So, you know, where I had, let me show you here. So you can see that there's a bit of a darker crease in here. I can kind of move that, erase it a bit, move it around a little. See? So, if I really wanted to remove it, clean finger. Kind of different spot. And you can see how much comes up. So, don't despair if you're a little heavy-handed with it, but that's why I'm offloading my brush as well. Now, I'm going to continue to do that to the piece, age it a little bit more, and then I am also going to take my golden rule from DIY. Now this is, I'm going to use this one. This is very thick and it's very translucent. It's very light. I want to add a little bit of a metallic tone back in, but I don't want it to be super harsh, right? So if you see here versus none, it's very soft. It's very, very kind of translucent. I could make it go stronger if I did multiple coats, but that's why I'm using this versus a product like Rub and Buff, is because I want that faint metallic look, but I don't want it in your face. I want it to kind of, as well, look like it's been aged and worn off the piece more than anything else. And so I'm going to continue to add that as well after I've done all my dark wax to the piece, just to lend a little bit more detail in, especially to those raised elements. And just highlight them a little bit more. You can kind of see some of that gold glinting off of that. But that's the pieces that I'm doing, and then we are finished with this. So I guess a couple of takeaways, and I'll take a couple of pics for you so that you can see. I feel like I'm echoing. Is how much you can transform a piece, obviously with a little bit of paint and a little bit of wax. Those odds and ends of the decoupage papers, especially these ones that I just kind of tore and added in, and they just make it look a little bit more worn. Adds a little bit of, you know, that things have been added and worn away and then repainted. It gives a little bit more of that aged kind of look. You can use that same technique on bigger pieces. You can do that on furniture, much the same way. Definitely tear all the edges so that they're uneven. You don't want any of those sharp lines. You want it to look like it was on the piece and then got ripped off and torn. And this looks great on walls if you're doing some textured walls and embedding some torn pieces of paper in there so that it all looks like it was all kind of spackled together and you know, plastered in. But you can use these techniques on larger pieces to great effect, following the same kind of process, right? And don't underestimate that coffee kind of, I'm gonna say wash, definitely has a different look when it's applied to that open raw paint. If I had done this with an all-in-one, it's just going to flow over the top. It's not going to impact the paint at all because the paint is sealed. So it's a technique that you can use, but only when you're using a paint that has no sealer built into it. So perfect for use with the DIY clay paint. It would work with any chalk paint of your choice for sure. But anything that is already sealed, it's just going to drift across the top. You're not going to get the same impact. It's not going to color your paint in any way. It would color and stain any unsealed paper products that you have on it if you're doing the decoupaging, but not impact the paint the same way. And I wanted these, the paper, to end up looking like it was just a part of the process. I wanted it embedded in the paint. I wanted it to look like it had been there forever. And the steps we took did that. I hope that this gives you some ideas on ways that you could use this, ways that you could do this. I mean, you could do the same thing on small wooden gift tags, even cardboard, but you're doing fairly wet. It might cause it to curl or bend a little bit, but really stiff cardstock would work as well to get that same aged effect. So don't think that you can't go bigger. Don't think you can't go smaller to be able to get the same effect. Hope this was helpful. Hope I gave you a couple of tips to add to your toolkit. And I certainly look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.